Paranormal experiences don't really work to a timescale, and therefore we invite you to listen to a Dark Minisode. Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of our look at a more famous case for a minisode. It's indeed Halloween season, and this is us doing our bit, so to speak. These cases obviously have not been sent in by our listeners. They will still be the minisode of a Wednesday. But for these Monday minisodes, which our Patreons will receive on a Friday, these are the cases which may not have had enough light shone on them compared to your Amityvilles or your Enfield poltergeists. They're nonetheless recorded and documented historical paranormal cases. Plus, I think we all know the shows that don't normally focus on the paranormal will be looking all over things like Amityville, Enfield, the Black Monk of Pontefract, so it's good to step away from the more well-known cases and walk the less trodden path to discover those cases that are historically relevant and equally terrifying, but don't get the coverage they deserve. And if listening to these mini episodes about these more famous cases makes you take a deeper dive into the case, then all the better. Now, some of you may well know about this case from the 18th century in England. If not, take 15 minutes out of your day and join me to hear about the 7 Demons of George Lukins. The village of Yatton in Somerset, England, surrounded by rolling hills and mist-shrouded moors, is everything you imagine when you picture an 18th century English village. However, Yatton is no London, and it was untouched by the tumultuous changes of the 18th century. Its cobblestone streets and thatch-roof houses only emphasise the simple rural way of life the villagers lived. Yet, in 1788, all this was due to change, because the tranquil, quiet hamlet became the epicentre of a chilling event that would blur the lines between the natural and the supernatural. The case of George Lukins. George was a familiar figure in Yatton. Born around 1743, he was a humble tailor, renowned for his meticulous attention to detail and craftsmanship. He was a devout churchgoer, and throughout the church he was known as having one of the most melodic voices in there. He would lead hymns during services, and allegedly they would stir the souls of the people who listened. But beneath this unassuming exterior, it would appear a darkness was brewing. One that would not only consume George, but the entire community of Yatton. The strange occurrences began rather subtly. George had taken part in a traditional Christmas mummers play. Some would even go on to say it was the very participation in this play that caused what would go on to happen. You see, the mummers play has some of its roots based in pagan beliefs. It was whilst George was acting his part in the mummers play that he states he was slapped across the face by an invisible hand, a sensation that left him clearly unsettled. Shortly thereafter, he began experiencing fits and seizures that would baffle all of the physicians in the area. A Dr. Smith of Rington and Dr. Langworthy of Bristol applied the medical treatment of the day: bloodletting, emetics and tonics. But nothing would alleviate his condition. Neighbours in the village whispered of eerie sounds emanating from George's modest cottage, which sat more or less hidden on the outskirts of the village. At night, villagers reported hearing hymns that were sung backward, in haunting tones. Children claimed to see shadows moving unnaturally behind his windows. and any animals in the area would grow restless near his home. This once amiable tailor became a recluse. His cheerful demeanour was replaced by a vacant stare. His melodic voice became unsettling mutterings. As the months turned into years, George's afflictions intensified. Witnesses described alarming behaviour. He would speak in voices that were not his, sometimes deep and guttural, others high-pitched and mocking, and other times he would talk in a language that was unknown to everyone present. Then there were his fits. His body would twist into grotesque positions, and he would exhibit strength that seemed beyond his own or any other human capability. He would utter profanities and mock any religious practices. The singing of hymns in reverse or reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards, obvious signs of trying to mock the Christian community that he was once proudly part of. He also developed an aversion to sacred objects. George would react violently to the presence of Bibles, crucifixes, any holy items. And because of these things, the murmurs amongst the clergy were of demonic influences. As clergy of surrounding villages heard more and more of the case, they contacted the local Reverend Smith. The priest decided to try and calm the situation. He tried to reassure his fellow clergymen that George was indeed a holy man. He just lost his way a touch, so he would go and pay him a visit. So that night, Reverend Smith goes and knocks on George's door, only to be met with a very hostile George. With a scowl on his face and vacant eyes, he looked at the priest and hissed, "The 7 are here." Reports vary on the very short conversation that ensued, but in some reports, the priest asks who the 7 are, and he's met with the answer, "We are Legion." George claimed to be possessed by 7 demons, a number that holds significant biblical resonance, mirroring the story of Mary Magdalene, from whom Jesus cast out 7 demons. Although to Reverend Smith he did not specify their names, the implication was clear. He was under the dominion of powerful, malevolent forces. The villagers, all steeped in religious tradition and folklore, believed that the affliction may be a punishment from God for George practicing some form of witchcraft. Other people, as mentioned earlier, blamed his participation in the Mummers play, a play that even today is still enacted in certain areas of this town. And so, with the bloodletting and other medical science of the day failing to provide any answers, the community were desperate for spiritual intervention. Reverend Joseph Easterbrook, the vicar of Temple Church in Bristol, heard of the plight of George and agreed to meet him. Upon witnessing George's condition firsthand, Easterbrook was convinced he required an exorcism. Reverend Easterbrook, in a rare for the time cross-faith interaction, consulted with Methodist ministers who were known for their experience with spiritual maladies. This included Reverend John Wesley, the founder of Methodism. Although Wesley himself didn't participate, his teachings influenced the approach that was taken, and on June the 13th, 1788, at Temple Church, a group consisting of ministers from both the Anglican and Methodist churches gathered together to begin the exorcism of George Lukins. There were a total of 7 ministers, 1 for each of the alleged demons that dwelt within. Today's episode is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns make it easy to start automatically saving and investing for you, for your kids, and your retirement. If you're anything like me, you would have believed you need a degree or you need some expert knowledge and a load of money before you invest, but it's just not true. You don't need a lot of money or expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals. They then automatically invest your money for you. And now Acorns is putting their money into your future. Open an Acorns Later IRA and get up to a 3% match on new contributions. And that's extra money for your retirement. Acorns has allowed me to look back at my past at times when I've thought, investment isn't for people like me. And although now I'm a huge fan of Acorns, I just wish they existed 25 years ago when I first started earning money. Because by having the wrong perception that investment isn't for people like me, I've not given my money the chance to grow. But that's something, even at this point in life, I'm going to make right. So why don't you head over to acorns.com/darkparanormal or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Paid non-client endorsements. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Investment involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/darkparanormal. Today's episode is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns make it easy to start automatically saving and investing for you, for your kids, your retirement. You're probably thinking, I need surplus money to invest, but you don't need a lot of money nor expertise to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then automatically invests your money for you. And right now, Acorns is putting their money into your future. Open an Acorns Later IRA and get up to a 3% match on new contributions. That's extra money for your retirement. If you're anything like me, you always thought investing's what other people do. Other people who know what they're doing. Well, that's where Acorns come in. They do know what they're doing on your behalf. And they're also putting their money where their mouth is, because as mentioned earlier, open an Acorns Later IRA and you'll get up to a 3% match on new contributions. So head to acorns.com/darkparanormal or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Paid non-client testimonial. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Investing involves risk. Acorn Advisors, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorn.com/darkparanormal. The exorcism was conducted in a private chamber to avoid public spectacle. As the ministers commenced with prayers and hymns, George's demeanour shifted dramatically. He entered a trance-like state, and then his body convulsed violently. His voice transformed, echoing with multiple tones as he mocked the clergy and blasphemed.
"Thou fools!"
he snarled.
"Your faith is weak."
The air grew thick with tension as the clergyman persisted, reciting passages from the scriptures and commanding the demons to depart in the name of Jesus Christ. George's fits intensified. He sang bawdy songs, then would abruptly switch to solemn hymns, sung in reverse. At one point, he reportedly levitated slightly above the chair he was bound to, straining the binds to their absolute limit. For over 2 hours, the battle between sacred and profane raged. The ministers, though shaken, remained steadfast. Reverend Easterbrook pressed a crucifix to George's forehead, eliciting a blood-curdling scream. "By the power of the Holy Trinity," Easterbrook proclaimed, "I command you, unclean spirits, to leave this man." One final violent convulsion shook George's entire body. Then, abruptly, he fell silent and collapsed, and the room was enveloped in an eerie calm. Moments later, George opened his eyes. This time his expression was one of peace, clarity, a clarity not seen in years, and in a steady voice he recited the Lord's Prayer. this time correctly and without hesitation. Tears streamed down his face as he thanked each clergyman individually. "I'm delivered," he whispered. "God be praised." News of the exorcism spread rapidly. It appeared in the newspapers of the Bristol Gazette, the London Morning Post, and more. The public reaction was a mixed one. Some hailed the event as a divine victory over evil, a sign that God had allowed faiths to combine to defeat the devil himself. Others described it as superstition and folly. You see, not everyone accepted the supernatural explanation for George's condition. A Dr. Samuel Ferris, a physician and contemporary skeptic, published accounts suggesting that George suffered from epilepsy, or a form of hysteria, a common diagnosis for any unexplained ailments at that time. He argued the exorcism might have actually provided a psychological release rather than a spiritual one. Moreover, critics questioned the involvement of Methodist ministers, suggesting that their fervent style may have influenced George's behaviour. The collaboration between Anglican and Methodist clergy was unusual, and it most certainly stirred debate within ecclesiastical circles. For George Lukins himself, well, he returned to Yatton. Reports state he lived the remainder of his life quietly, free from the fits and episodes that had plagued his life. The villagers, though relieved, could not entirely shake the memory of George's darker days, and he was basically shunned. You see, for the people of Yatton and beyond, the story of George Lukins became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the thin veil between the known world and the mysteries that lie beyond. The tale of George Lukins still continues to fascinate and unsettle. It serves as both a historical account and a chilling narrative that blurs the lines between fact and folklore. You can imagine the dimly lit chamber of the temple church on that fateful day, the air thick with incense and anxiety, flickering candles, long shadows on the stone walls, the chanting of the ministers battling against the guttural sounds of a man apparently possessed by forces beyond our comprehension. You can imagine the locals in the village, huddled in their homes at night as whispers of demons abound, the palpable fear that any one of them could be next, unseen malevolent forces lurking in the dark corners of their own homes. Whether we view the case of George Lukins as a genuine case of demonic possession or a manifestation of some psychological distress, it still remains a powerful narrative to us, human beings. We have an enduring allure of the mysterious. We want to be reminded of the unexplainable. We want to explain it. We go on journeys that leads us to the edges of our fear and our faith. And it's in the quiet moments of night, when you hear the whispers in the trees or the creaks in your own home, that the stories of the people like George Lukins come to mind. Like an echo from history, urging us to ponder those unseen forces that may shape our world, and definitely shape our perceptions. Even if you don't believe in the paranormal, your perceptions are still shaped by it. The next time you're out with a group of skeptics, who may all say, "No, I don't believe in the paranormal," ask if they'd have a Ouija board in their home, or if they'd try the Ouija board. Because I guarantee you, the number of people who said, "No, I don't believe in the paranormal," there will be one or two who will say, "No, I'd never do the Ouija board," which kind of goes against their stance against the paranormal. Well, that about wraps things up for our first non-listener minisode for the Halloween season. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking to you all again on Wednesday for our listener minisode. Until then, stay safe and take care.